You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynne Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 30th of December 2013. Northumbria Police Shame as offender given 50 cautions for crimes spanning 12 years. 300 stopped at just one airport for trying to get into Britain to give birth for free on the NHS. Exposed what they didn't tell you about the new wave of migrants heading for booming Britain. Turkish government in crisis over corruption scandal. France, Paris mosque sparks fury over separation of sexes. Italy, Roma woman steals church offerings after hypnotising priest. Italy, Northern League chief whips up secessionist sentiment. Hundreds of teens trash Brooklyn Mall in wild flash mob. Oil, Libyan production less than 25% of pre-revolution output. Hezbollah paying $25,000 per dead fighter to keep families quiet. Thought for the day, has the Kraken finally awoken? And finally, for all grandmas and grandpas everywhere. UK news. Northumbria Police Shame as offender given 50 cautions for crimes spanning 12 years. A prolific criminal escaped prosecution with a slap on the wrist on 50 occasions, it was revealed yesterday. The unnamed offender was given cautions for dozens of crimes dating back 12 years by Northumbria Police. The force, which refused to disclose any details about the man or his offences, now admits the punishments were used inappropriately. The figure is the latest shocking evidence of how police forces are misusing cautions and other out-of-court disposals. Critics suspect persistent thugs, vandals and shoplifters are being dealt with too leniently by officers who simply want to get them off the books. They are concerned at the widespread use of cautions, which do not count as a criminal conviction but are a means of rapidly closing down police inquiries. Under a simple caution, an offender only has to admit their guilt and a record of the offence is kept for a limited period before being deleted. World at 8. And we wonder why the prisons are full and the lunatic asylums are as well, and yet more and more criminals are being let off. What ethnicity is the unnamed one? Would it be interesting to know? 300 stopped at just one airport trying to get into Britain to give birth for free on the NHS. Hundreds of pregnant foreigners are flying to Britain just days before they give birth so they can receive free healthcare courtesy of the NHS, a report has found. The women are duping airlines who normally forbid expectant mothers more than 36 weeks pregnant to fly so they can receive the free service. Expectant mothers trick airlines in their home countries by letting them fly by showing staff forged doctors' notes which conceal the length of their pregnancies. Most of the women who arrive at NHS hospitals then have to be admitted and allowed to give birth, the report found, because their pregnancies were too advanced for them to fly home. World at 8. Wasn't too advanced for them to fly here, was it? Do a special large plane and fly them off. Once here, we will never get rid, especially with the EU right to family life that we have adopted. Things have to be getting worse for our benefits to reach into the bush or jungle, doesn't it? Enough is enough, and like the straw that broke the camel's back, this will have to end. Exposed what they didn't tell you about the new wave of migrants heading for booming Britain. Bulgarians and Romanians will flock to Britain in far greater numbers than forecast as our economy races ahead of the rest of Europe, a secret report predicts. After immigration controls are lifted this week, Britons could find their jobs are squeezed in some areas, while community tensions could rise as the new wave of migrants fight for work with other Eastern Europeans who have been settled in Britain for a decade, it suggests. The Home Office funded review obtained by the Mail on Sunday also suggests that the UK could lose out financially if low-paid Bulgarians and Romanians drive out Poles on higher wages who pay more tax. From Wednesday, Bulgarians and Romanians, known as A2 migrants, will have the same rights as other EU citizens to live and work throughout Europe, but Britain is likely to be seen as more attractive than other countries struggling to make an economic comeback. The authoritative report by University of Reading academics was commissioned ahead of the change by a group of 74 councils in the south-east of England, working with the UK Border Agency, Police and Health Services, but it has not been officially publicised. World at 8. We were full up and suffering 20 years ago, but no one cared then, as it was an Asian problem. Now it is a European one. The shite has hit the fan, but it's all semantics. We should just stop it now, for anyone, from anywhere, anytime, like the Martini girl, or rather not. European news. Turkish government in crisis over corruption scandal. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has reshuffled almost half the entire cabinet, 10 ministers, in a bid to stave off calls that he should resign over a corruption scandal. One of the ministers who lost his job is Egemen Bagis, the EU Affairs Minister and chief negotiator for Turkey's EU membership. The move comes amid an ongoing police investigation into allegations of illicit money transfers to Iran and government officials having taken bribes for construction projects. The sons of 3 ministers as well as the head of the state-run bank, Halkbank, are among 24 people who have been arrested on bribery charges after police found millions of US dollars stashed in shoeboxes. World at 8. It would be interesting to see just how many of these dollars have ended up in someone's grubby paw at the EU, wouldn't it? France. Paris mosque sparks fury over separation of sexes. Muslim women reacted angrily this week to a new ruling that the sexes must be separated during prayers at the Great Mosque in Paris, France's biggest Muslim centre. Female worshippers at the Great Mosque of Paris, the oldest and most prestigious in the country, are demanding the right to pray alongside men following the mosque's decision to separate the sexes. After a ruling earlier this month, women must pray in a separate room located underneath the main prayer hall. World at 8. Get over it. Just living in a Western country doesn't mean mosques will revert to normal. Men and women are separate in Islam as they are in Jewish law. They worship separately. Get over it. Italy. Roma woman steals church offerings after hypnotising priest. A woman made off with Christmas offerings made to a local church in the northern Italian city of Padua after having hypnotised the local priest and entered the cloisters where women are banned to make off with some €1,800 in cash. The money was the total offerings gifted to the parish over the Christmas period. The 71-year-old priest of Padua's Santa Augustina Abbey alerted the police after one of his colleagues informed him of the theft after he came out of the hypnosis-induced trance the woman had placed him under. She was described to law enforcement officers by the victim as a Roma gypsy aged around 35. World at 8. Not quite past it then, was she? Probably hypnotised the good man by flashing her boobs. Italy. Northern League chief whips up secessionist sentiment. Matteo Salvini, the leader of Italy's regionalist Northern League, began whipping up secessionist sentiment amongst his northern Italian base on Friday, indicating independence as well as a possible exit from the euro single currency as the solution to the dire economic straits that the north of Italy is facing. In order to relaunch employment, the only solution is independence, Salvini said. Small and medium-sized companies are asking us to accelerate on this battle. Salvini said the single currency had devastated the northern Italian economy, reducing it to poverty in the 11 years since its introduction and pushing unemployment levels never seen before World War II, Salvini added. Salvini went on to say that the options that could be considered were the two-tier euro system that divided up the eurozone into a core group and a periphery group of participants, as well as the return to national currencies. What is certain is that the euro is the death of our economy and that this point would be a political battle cry for the Northern League in the upcoming elections. We are not Eurosceptics, but instead we are the last of the convinced Europeans, he said. However, if we need to exit the euro to relaunch the economy, this will be our battle. World news. Hundreds of teens trash Brooklyn Mall in wild flash mob. Hundreds of teenagers stormed and trashed a Brooklyn Mall in a wild flash mob that forced the shopping centre to close its doors during day after Christmas sales, sources said on Friday. More than 400 crazed teens grabbed and smashed jars of candy, stole cheap items such as baby balloons and beat up security guards at Kings Plaza shopping centre in Mill Basin between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m, merchants said. A violent game of knockout also broke out on the upper level of the mall, and one teen may have been carrying a gun, sources said. The teens used social media to plan the mass looting, vowing to put the mall on tilt or to raid it, according to posts on Facebook and Twitter. Clerks who scrambled to close up their shops said they were terrified. "I've been there 7 years and I have never seen anything like this before. I am so scared. I know they will come back," said Abu Talab, 31, a clerk at Candy Plaza 2. World at 8. And wouldn't you know it, all the photos are black youths on the rampage. How can a poor and depressed minority afford all the technical gumph needed to arrange this? Quite. Our time will come, only they'll have to fight the Muslims to do it. Oh joy. One question, where were the National Guard, dogs and water hoses? One call is what it takes. Just one. Oil. Libyan production less than 25% of pre-revolution output. Libyan oil production has dropped to 230,000 barrels a day since workers shut down eastern terminals and sites at the end of July, the Oil and Gas Ministry said Monday. Worker strikes have caused output to drop from an average of 1.6 million barrels a day before the 2011 revolution to a historic low of 110,000 barrels a day in 2013. The central government's repeated attempts to negotiate a solution, including several visits to Cyrenaica by Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zidane and an offer of a 67% pay hike for oil workers, have so far been unsuccessful. World at 8. Obviously rebels don't work as hard as workers who have obviously got some beef with someone. Chaos versus chaos, perhaps. Hezbollah paying $25,000 per dead fighter to keep families quiet. Source claimed Iranian-backed Shia terrorist group paying families of fighters killed in Syria to conceal cause of relatives' death. Hezbollah is reported paying the families of its fighters killed in Syria to keep quiet about the circumstances surrounding their relatives' deaths. According to a source in the Lebanese port city of Tripoli, which has been racked by deadly clashes between militias supporting different sides on the Syrian civil war, the Iranian-backed group is paying $25,000 to families of operatives killed fighting Syrian rebel forces, apparently in an attempt to conceal the true extent of its support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Hezbollah used to enjoy widespread popularity across the Sunni-Shia divide for fighting Israel, but is now widely reviled by Sunni groups and has faced numerous deadly attacks on its own strongholds inside Lebanon due to its role in fighting Sunni rebels in Syria. World at 8. I don't care as long as Assad keeps fighting and keeps that government going. All the refugees who are fleeing, whether it be the government forces or the rebels, shouldn't be coming to Europe. They are not European and have no ties with Europe. Keep them there until things even out. Nothing lasts forever, but once they're over in the UK, they unfortunately will. This Arab winter is nothing to do with us and should remain so. Thought for the day. Has the Kraken finally awoken? Looking at the new headlines over the last few days before the end of another glorious year for immigrants and migration gurus, one would think that January the 1st heralds the start of a new happening in this country, when in fact it is heralding, hopefully, the end of 50 years of solid, uninterrupted migration from all over the world into our small and now very overcrowded island. You would think that Britain has suddenly awoken from a dream in which it has suffered an invasion by enemies unknown over many years and woken up to the fact that a few more are to be foisted upon us. In short, waking up when the stable door has been well and truly opened and the stable boy killed, but the horses are still there. I fail to see the difference between a grubby and ghastly Roma and a prolific African rapist, a greedy Muslim businessman and a mega-rich Qatari, an ambitious and cunning Chinese tong leader and an Eastern European sex trafficker, a Russian gangster and a West Indian gangster, an honour killing of a young Asian girl by her relatives and the rape and prostitution of a very young white girl by those same relatives. In short, all those mentioned exhibit the mores of their cultures and not ours or those of our country. And this is where all discussions of immigration stop suddenly. Despite various political leaders and followers feeling suddenly free to bring up this toxic topic, which in effect has been made toxic by them when any nationalist has brought it up over a very long period of time, it is now open season on guess who, the Romanians and Bulgarians who will, as many of their countrymen have done over the last few years, come over here but this time in a semi-legal way, whilst their predecessors slithered over here illegally and are still here illegally. The question of whether illegal or legal makes no difference to the average immigrant at all. We're just sitting ducks with the government and councils all still willing and eager to provide them with a way of life with which they were not eager to provide our own poor and homeless with. We are being overrun with Syrian refugees who have no business over here at all. They are Middle Eastern people with a different culture and religion and need to stay near home to return when anything calms down. There are more Muslims being killed by Muslims in Iraq, Egypt, Libya and Syria than British or US forces are responsible for. Therefore, no refugees from there should be allowed in this country. We are not responsible for them. Africans, black? No. The old colonial days are long gone and we've paid our debt to these people. There are no ties with the old Commonwealth for the vast majority of them, so no, their country is big enough for them and ours isn't. No to anyone from Eastern Europe. They have their own countries, so why take ours? If their standard of living is low, work to make it better. Don't act like rats leaving a sinking ship and stay there. Have some loyalty to your own country of birth. And I don't give a fig for the EU or the Schengen borders, and neither obviously does France or Germany, with their edicts on how we in the UK should accept and submit to hordes of people we don't want and we don't need. The Chinese and all from the Far East go home. Your countries need you. We really have no need for the vast majority of takeaways and the ever increasing need of nail bars and Thai massage parlours. The opium wars are long over and are now being waged in South America and Afghanistan courtesy of the Colombians and the Muslims. So get educated for free somewhere else and sod off. This ain't America and the railways. From the Indian subcontinent, oh what a plethora of people this is, and all must be over here. No, no and more no. They've made their own country unlivable in and are proceeding to do the same with ours. Indian landlords with sheds for Africans and Muslim landlords with sheds for other Muslims all litter our old towns from stem to stern. What are the councils allowing? Or probably being paid to allow their fellow immigrants to do? Just leave. Most of you have huge homes and families in your own hometowns, which you are keeping by milking the Great British and your own. Diversity bods have all the worst case scenarios with the leaving of the EU or the stopping or capping of immigration, and all are propagandising the general public, who around Christmas certainly have no thoughts in their minds other than the next tablet to buy or the next bottle of whatever to consume or the next relation to avoid. Such is the spirit of Christmas. Our country has changed so much since immigration and the common market debacle intruded on our lives and in this country. Once we had a thriving fishing industry. Once we had a thriving and productive farming industry. Once we had a thriving shipbuilding industry. Once we had an efficient coal industry. Once we owned our automotive industry. Once we owned our own iron and steel industry. Once we owned our own water companies. Once we owned our own power industry. Once we had a brilliant aircraft industry in which led the world. Remember what happened to the TSR-2. Once we had tighter control of our borders and immigration. Once we were able to defend ourselves with our armed forces that had a high morale. Once we had the finest health service in the world. Once we had the finest education system in the world with secondary, technical and grammar schools. Once we had a great sense of national pride. Once we had the best police force in the world. Once we had an excellent railway system and public transport. Once we had an extremely efficient postal service. Once we pioneered the civil nuclear industry. Once we had the best justice system in the world. Once we had open courts and not secret ones. Once we had trial by jury at all times. Once we had freedom from double jeopardy. Once we had offshore oil. Once we had full employment. Once we had houses that were affordable to first-time buyers on just one income. Once we had free, proper universities. Once we had a religion that was respected by all, even if not believed in. Once we had a morality based on that religion. Once we had no common purpose. Once we had no hate or thought crimes. Once we had capital punishment. Once we had fewer regulations because common sense ruled and not the EU, political correctness, Marxism, diversity and yet more demons. Now, taking into account all those changes, if we did ever manage to shake off the yoke of the EU and replace it with another form of European Union which suited us in the UK, and stopped immigration from all countries for at least 10 years and started deportations of illegals and foreign criminals, of course there would be differences. Greedy employers who have been singing the Lazy Brit song for years would have to up their rates temporarily to employ Brits. We would have to resort to building our own farming and fisheries, which have almost disappeared. The man in the street would have to accept certain shortages of having strawberries only in season, and many of the techie things which make our own kids virtual loners or prey to online perversities might be in short demand. And moreover, some women would have to clean their own houses and bring up their own children. But there would be fewer people to feed, clothe, pay for, give free health benefits to, and our schools would hopefully in time revert to decent numbers. It wouldn't be easy. We'd have to reopen the coal mines with help from the criminals to work there. We would be unpopular with the rest of the world. But what has being popular brought us? Disaster, boatloads, plane loads and lorry loads of disasters. We need to rethink our country and our needs before the results of overcrowding make themselves apparent. Riots, shortages of food, pandemics and chaos, to name a few. Remember, we cannot just go over the borders of our country into another's, as so many millions have done, deserted their own places of birth and taken over ours. This is our island, our only island, and it is not in the sun at present. Here is to a better new year for all of us. And finally, a poem for 2013 and for all the forgotten grannies and grandpas and the ones who can only keep in touch by computer. This is for you. The computer swallowed Grandma. Yes, honestly, it's true. She pressed Control and Enter and disappeared from view. It devoured her completely. The thought just makes me squirm. She must have caught a virus or been eaten by a worm. I've searched through the recycle bin and files of every kind. I've even used the internet, but nothing did I find. In desperation I asked Mr. Google my searches to refine. The reply from him was negative. Not a thing was found online. So if inside your inbox my grandma you should see, please copy, scan and paste her and send her back to me. That's a tribute to all the grandmas, grandpas, nanas and pops who have been fearless and learned to use the computer. They are the greatest. We do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Never be the first to get old. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynne Mozart and I wish you all a very good night. We also wish all our listeners and supporters a very happy and prosperous new year, and please eat as much pork as you can and drink as much booze, because you never know what the new year will bring. We'll be on air this coming Friday the 3rd of January 2014, and a very happy new year.